What's up, guys? Welcome back to True Sound Studios. I'm Weezna. So today, I'm going to show you guys some different techniques on how to make your chorus sound bigger and just hit harder. Now, this is something I've seen over the years kind of progressively get to the point where, verses and choruses kind of just sound the same now. And not for every track and not for every genre, but a lot of it. It just, the verse kind of just blends right in the chorus and it just never has that big like lifting moment. Now, this has a lot to do with the fact that I'm not mixing as many tracks as I was before. I would say 50-60% of all the business I do is all mastering, so I can't actually implement these techniques that I'm going to show you guys into the mixes to make these choruses sound really big. So we're going to be focusing on kind of like three different techniques here. So one is going to be the recording/production part of it. Some things you can do in the production recording process to make things sound, not necessarily smaller, but just make sure that when the chorus hits, it's like this big epic moment. And then number two, I'm going to show you guys some mixing techniques of some of the individual elements that will help to make, the verses, just not sound so wide and massive, but when the chorus hits, it really explodes. And then the third thing is really just some like editing and placement of stops and silent parts, and then some sound effects or kind of lead-in effects that will really help just impact your chorus. Okay, so with all that being said, let's get into the track. Okay, so this track is a track I wrote specifically for this video. I needed to make sure we have all these elements in here. And so there's just two parts of the song. There's the beginning part, the first half is the verse, and then it goes into the chorus. So let me just play you roughly halfway through the verse, and then you'll hear the transition. It's not gonna be that great, but when we get to the end of it, you're gonna know that it's the chorus. Okay, so you could hear the drums go from, an open hi-hat to a crash, and the guitars get a bit louder. But really, that's not enough to, really make this sound like it's a big epic chorus. So let's first start with the drums, and we're going to do a drum break right before that chorus. You first want to, create some suspense, and by doing that, you gotta drop some stuff out. So in this case, we're going to first drop out the drums, and then we'll drop out the guitars and stuff after that. But so let's first just edit the drums. Okay, so right around here is where we kind of transition. So right up here, this says chorus. So this is where the chorus actually starts. Once again, it's open hi-hat here, and then it's crash into the chorus. That's kind of like the part. But right around here, right before the chorus actually hits, we want to do some sort of, drum fill that's going to stop and then restart. So right around here. So the first thing we're going to do is zoom in on our drums, which are up top here. So we don't need this. We're going to get rid of these. And then this is the beginning of the chorus. And then what actually I'm going to do to create this big stopping moment is just slide the snare over. So right there, right on there, we want that to be our end. So get rid of these. These are all hi-hats here. So already getting a little better. And then I already programmed in these drums. It's just tom, tom, tom. So it goes like this. Whoops, we wouldn't have a hi-hat there. Okay, cool. So now we have, we have a drum fill with a snare, and that's our like stopping point. So okay, so that is definitely much better. Now we are starting to create this impact moment where the chorus is going to hit, but you can kind of tell that our guitars and bass should stop with this snare drum. So just so you guys can see, make this a little easier, I'm going to drag the snare down to here. So what we're going to do is, you can see these are our bass notes. Boom, boom, boom. So what we're going to do is actually going to cut this here, get rid of these, and then do a little fade on the backside. And I'm if you guys are in Cakewalk Band Lab, you can just kind of grab the top of the clip and just fade them. So this is what it would sound like right now. So maybe just a bit shorter. Zoom out a bit more. There we go. So now we're starting to create some, something that's going to happen here. It's something of excitement. Okay, very cool. So let's, now that we got at least the drums cut there, here's another little thing that I will often do. Let's bring this snare track back up here. So now you'll notice in our verse, which is here, we just have a single snare drum. But on the chorus, we actually have two snares. And so all I'm doing is I'm adding in this snare room. So this is the snare sample that I use. It's just a snare room sound. So this is what the original snare sounds like that goes through the verse. But in the chorus here, we're going to add in our room sample. So now we're just going to give the snare a little bit more life, a little bit more something. This is what it sounded like without. A little bit more gunshot-like. It's got a little bit more impact. It's just something we can do just to get a little bit more excitement. We can boost some of the room sounds maybe in the rest of the drums too, just to make that chorus sound just a little bit bigger, a little bit more exciting. So now let's go back to the original guitar tracks and let's start playing around with some EQ and things that we can do to actually make the guitars sound a little bit smaller. So once again, when the chorus hits, it's bigger. Okay, so this is our guitar track. It says guitar stereo. And then this is our bass track. So what we're going to do is, with the guitar, right now it's the exact same guitar strumming that's happening in the verse and the chorus, which is not ideal. But sometimes this is what we are given, and so we got to work with it. But I'm going to show you guys something else additionally in the production phase that you could do. But let's first start with this. This is our stereo guitar track. And then with the drums, no bass. So we're going to add an EQ to try to thin this guitar out so it doesn't have as much power. So then just listen to it when it goes into the chorus. So that's one thing we can do is, we're kind of like voxing out, some people would call this voxing out the guitars. So we're thinning the low end, getting rid of some of the high end. So it's still there. It's still, still makes an impact, but it's thinner sounding than the chorus guitars. Another thing we can do, because right now it is a very wide sounding guitar track for our verse. What we can do is we can actually make it not as wide by using, I mean, you can use any plugin of your choice. I've been really liking this Softube bus processor. It's got this spatial section down here, and it really works so well. So take a listen to this. And then from the start. And so by making those guitars more mono, more in the center of the mix, we leave all those big wide guitars for our chorus, which once again is just going to make it sound bigger. So let me just play you from the very end of the verse into the chorus with the EQ on there that's kind of, taking off some of the lows and highs, and then also making those guitars more mono. This is really all we can do with our stereo recorded guitars. I mean, it is what it is. Can't really do too much more with that, but we can, play around with it. The other element that's being, played both in the verse and the chorus, exactly the same, is our bass. So here's our bass in the chorus and in the verse. This is the verse. Nothing too exciting. But what we can do is we can kind of give some opposite energy. So in the verse, what we're going to do is we're going to take a EQ and kind of scoop, get rid of some of the super subby lows on the bass. So this is not too dramatic, it's not crazy, but we are rolling off a little bit of low end. But consequently, with our chorus bass, okay, so this is down here, we're going to add a plugin that's actually going to give us even more low end. So this is the Waves Submarine. It just adds sub octaves. And so this is going to help give us more low end. So we're taking some low end out of the verse and we're adding additional low end in the chorus. So this is kind of like the transition point from here to here. This is verse. I might not be able to hear that much, but it's adding additional sub energy into our bass. So now, once again, our bass is bassier in our chorus, but our verse bass has less low end. So if we just take a listen to this real quick. That sounds great. We are definitely starting to create something great. Another thing we can do is instead of just having that bass just play the same thing over, do, 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 it's just it's not very exciting sounding. We can actually cut up our bass to kind of give it some movement. So what I did was I actually took the bass track, I brought it up to my kick and my snare channels up top here. And what I did is I actually cut out the spaces in between. So here's the kick drum, here's the snare drum. And so anytime there wasn't a kick or snare playing, I cut out the blank space. And this way we can kind of create something like this. Now, I get it. It's not perfect, right? I mean, if you had a bass player who could play some cool bass line in this verse, that would have been done in the recording process. This is this is what you're given, or maybe this is what you've already recorded and you don't want to go back and re-record things. You can literally just, by editing, cut this up and create something that sounds a little more bouncy now. Now it's just not that straight driving bass through the verse. It's another way to kind of cut this up, because to me, when you have that constant playing bass, do, like, it's got power to it because the bass isn't stopping. So by being able to cut it up, we're creating some holes in the sound, and therefore it doesn't necessarily sound as big. So let's just say that's not for you. You want to start, you're in the writing process, you want to make the chorus sound big. What do you do? So first, we get rid of those stereo recorded guitars, and we're going to go down to some of these guitar tracks that I recorded separately. So this all starts with just some chords, but instead of doing the the down picking, now we're just playing on every bar or every 4 count. So take a listen to this. So now we've started to create something. Okay, so it doesn't have the exact same identity now as the same strumming pattern as it has in the chorus. And also, if you're going to notice over here, so this is our guitar track, and we're only panning it 58%. So we're only panning it 58% to the right. We're not doing the full 100% left and right thing. And this is what's going to help to create the verse that sounds a little bit smaller and not as wide. And then we have a second guitar that's actually going to come in right here. Which is the same thing as before, except this is mono, and we have the option now of being able to pan these. So the top one's 58 right, this one's 58 left. So now we're starting to create, a little bit of stereo separation with it, because we have one guitar doing one strumming pattern and the other doing the other, but now we at least don't have this super wide track. So take a listen from here. So if you guys are enjoying this video, please click that like button. So now we're getting there. Now we're starting to create this thing that isn't as massive sounding. It's not just a copy of the guitars that we have in the chorus that are in our verse. So now we've created, some distinction between our verse and our chorus. So now you might say, well, that just sounds too empty for me. Well, first, let's add back in the bass. So let's just say that, you like it, but because there isn't guitars playing on both sides, you don't like the width of it. It doesn't sound full enough. Well, you can very easily just program in some keys or a pad or a synth or something to help fill up that space. It doesn't have to be sparkly and moving around. It can just literally be following that guitar that's just playing every bar. Something like this. That is just helping to fill in some space, create some depth in our track while we have just that one guitar playing. Now, let me just mute this while it's playing so you can maybe better hear what it's doing. So now, of course, you can mix that in the taste, but it's another way to fill up some space in the track. But that synth, after you add in some vocals, like it's going to be kind of tough to notice without like really occupying too much space. You don't want just another thing making more noise and another melody, because we're just going to get to the point where, now we have so much stuff going on in the verse that our chorus doesn't sound big anymore. So we've kind of like maxed out what we can do here in our verse. So now we're going to transition to the chorus. So let's first get to this. One of the first things we can do is add some sort of sound effect to transition into our chorus. So right here, I just have a simple reverse cymbal, which ends on that snare drum. So take a listen. So that's helping to, once again, build a little anticipation of what's coming next. And then, of course, this is not my favorite thing. It doesn't always work, but to have some sort of like explosive cymbal thing. Once again, it does. That's up to you, but take a listen to what it sounds like. So it's cool. It's adding some energy. Now we can get to our actual stereo guitars here in our chorus. So these, I always like to add something additional. And in this case, I'm actually scooping the guitars a little bit right here, pulling out a little 350, but I'm adding a little bit of 2.7K. So take a listen to this transition now with this EQ going on. So this is just adding, once again, a little bit more mid-range frequencies just to help kind of push it forward in the mix a little bit more without turning the volume up. And then we have our bass, which I already showed you guys. I had that the submarine plugin on there that's adding the sub lows to our bass. Not anything too crazy, but just, it is a little extra. So really the thing that to me always makes something sound like a chorus, and in the literal 1,000 songs or more that I've produced, I always put a lead in the chorus because it is so important. And a lot of times, and like in this song, I have two leads. I have like a lead guitar, and I always add in some sort of octaves like halfway through it to really help. Once again, we're just signifying this like building of energy without having any vocals in there yet. So here is the lead, and I'll play the octave and then kind of how I broke it up. So the lead guitar sounds like this. Then the octaves. Then the lead again. So now let's mix this into the song, because I really think now with that addition of that lead, you're really going to feel like now we are in the chorus. So, you can really tell that now we've created a chorus. And the best part is there's no vocals in here yet. Like, this sounds like a great song. It's building in the verse. The first half doesn't have a ton of instrumentation. Start bringing in some more instrumentation halfway through the verse. we get this big dropout and then a big explosion in the chorus with this lead that's very melodic. And then even that drops out for a second to give a little reprieve. But then the octaves pick up, so yet another element. But then we bring the lead back in to kind of like end the chorus. And that's what we have here. So now let's listen through from the very beginning to the very end. And I just like to let you know that there is no automation in any of this. So, I mean, you can write automation to, help build up swells or, you could do all sorts of things. I mean, I didn't even boost the drums. The drums are at the exact same level the entire time, except for that snare sample, that snare room sample that comes in. But that's it. I mean, I haven't even... we could overall boost the entire brightness of everything in the chorus, on the mix bus. We could get into more saturation. I mean, there's so much you can do, but, these are like great production techniques that you can use. And yes, this is like a rock song, right? But I mean, this exact same stuff you can use in EDM and pop and hip hop. Like, it doesn't need to be this genre. You just need to have these different types of elements and skills to be able to just take that mix and make that chorus sound really massive. So guys, I mix and master full time. Yes, I make YouTube videos, but mixing and mastering is my full-time job. So if you guys want help working on your song, whether it's mixing and or mastering, all the details are down below of how to contact me. And one of my favorite types of people to work with is just somebody recording at home that wants to take their home recordings and make them sound better. I usually find that people have more passion, they're more open to ideas and making things really sound great. And I'm all about, hey, maybe you should go back and re-record this, or, before you get started, send me a sample of your vocal recording so that I can listen to it first. We can fix things potentially even before, you record an entire song and there's something wrong that we could have easily fixed before anything really got started. So guys, that is it for this one. Now, please let me know your feedback down below, which techniques you use. Maybe if there's something new you learned, please drop a comment. It really means a lot. Of course, it helps to push these videos, which ultimately helps me. So guys, thank you very much for watching. Please click the like button, subscribe, do the thing. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.